All right, well, good morning. I want to thank you all for joining us today for this important announcement on the future of education here in the Commonwealth. But at the outset, I want to do something. I want to make something clear today that I tried to convey when I spoke at the School Administrators Conference a few weeks ago. To any teacher or administrator who is watching right now, I want you to know that I offer this proposal, these ideas, out of a spirit of humility. I know that you might have some apprehensions about me or, for that matter, any Republican nominee for governor. So let me just simply say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for any comments that have made you feel less than valued or have led you to have serious misgivings about the Republican Party on the topic of education. Know that this is heartfelt, and it's why I stand here before you today, because I want you to know that I appreciate you, that I respect you, and that I see what you do daily to fight for our kids. And I want to usher in a new relationship between our teachers, our school administrators, public education, and the Republican Party. And under my leadership, we will do so not only in word, but in deed. We know that the foundation of any strong society is protecting the family unit, maintaining safe streets, and making sure our kids have a quality education. And you and I know that while Andy Beshear has gotten really good at taking photos and passing out checks, he's not been great at addressing those core pillars necessary for a thriving society. In fact, because of his leadership, those foundational pillars are eroding underneath us. When it's come to protecting the family unit, specifically the innocence of our youth, he's been an obstacle. When the legislature passed common sense legislation to protect women's sports from biological males and to protect our children from transgender surgeries, Andy Beshear vetoed it. And on the issue of public safety, Beshear has made our streets more dangerous. Now, I know he unveiled a crime plan last week, but Kentuckians got a true taste of his crime plan in 2020 when he unlocked the jails and let out nearly 1,700 criminals, and a third of those criminals recommitted felonies, making law enforcement's job harder and our communities less safe. And his record on education has left our future generations floundering. While he was unlocking the jails, he was locking the schools. And because of it, our children are worse off than when he took office. Every metric by which we measure our students has seen a drop under Beshear's leadership. Fewer than half of Kentucky's students can read at grade level. In math, it's even worse. Science, just 29%. In national assessments since 2019, we have declined in every single tested category. And the governor's indifference to our children has caused many of them to be indifferent to school. Chronic absenteeism is near a 30% high since Andy Beshear's lockdowns. Think about that. 3 in 10 kids barely coming to school at all. The rise in despondent students born out of Beshear's short-sighted decision-making will only add to the learning loss, which is estimated to reduce students' lifetime earnings by tens of thousands of dollars. And all the while, kids, parents, and teachers are suffering. The failures of the last 4 years will cause ripple effects throughout families and society for generations. Andy Beshear followed Anthony Fauci down a rabbit hole of school closures that damaged our kids' future. And if you live in Jefferson County, the decline brought about by the Democratic Party is on full display. From a school board more focused on pronouns than bus routes, to a governor who shut down our schools, abandoned our families, and made our communities more dangerous. Kentucky's foundation under the Democratic Party's leadership is crumbling. But that's why I'm running for governor, to repair and restore our foundation, to make it stronger and more durable. That's why, as Attorney General, I have proudly defended legislation to protect our children. It's why, as a candidate for governor, I've offered a 12-point plan on public safety that details how we'll support the brave men and women of law enforcement and make our communities safer. It's why today I'm offering a bold education plan. We don't have to accept the decaying of our foundation. We don't have to accept a decade of decline for our children, unfulfilled promises for our teachers, and empty rhetoric for our families. We don't have to accept a governor who created an environment where an education commissioner felt brazen enough to demand that hardworking teachers quit their jobs if they didn't buy into the gender ideology curriculum. We can move forward. We can discard the policies of the past and embrace a future built on a solid foundation. A future in which a governor isn't constantly trying to stoke division between a political party and our educators, but instead looks to bring everyone together for the benefit of our kids. And I want every one of our public educators to know that I don't see you as political pawns. I see you as family. I see you in the form of my mom, who poured into her students at the community college. I see you in the form of my wife, who made the best of online instruction, relentlessly pursuing her kids despite the governor's shutdowns. And I see you in the form of my sister-in-law, who has been excited about the start of the school year and being at a new school. Public education is personal to me because I've lived it through those three women's experiences and my own as a student in the Hardin County school system. So when I say I have every reason in the world to support and promote our public education system, I mean it. Now, if we allow what Andy Beshear and the Democrats have done to our kids to turn into the status quo, then we will have permitted thousands of young people to be robbed of their God-given potential and their shot at the American dream. We cannot build a prosperous future without catching our kids up. So that's why today I am announcing and unveiling the Cameron Catch-Up Plan. It's a bold strategy that is built on peer-reviewed best practices to aggressively close the learning gap, to improve the classroom environment, and to get resources directly to our teachers. Now, this is a large undertaking, and it won't be without significant cost. But I can think of no higher purpose than fulfilling our obligation to provide a quality education to every Kentucky student. Bold ideas are needed when the stakes are this high. My plan will unite us all in the great purpose of giving our children a better future. Now, the cornerstone of the Cameron Catch-Up Plan is addressing learning loss by treating it as the emergency that it is. We will implement the largest expansion of reading and math instruction in the history of the Commonwealth. We will fully fund a 16-week tutoring program for additional math and reading instruction during both summertime and after-school hours. This plan is designed to rescue the students who have fallen behind the most. The research is clear, and examples from other states with better and stronger governors are compelling. Targeted and quality instruction offered in individual or small group settings over an extended period can be transformative in the life of a student and has been proven to help students who are grade levels behind in reading outcomes. Now, Andy Beshear, as we all know, kept students out of the classroom. Now, I believe it's time to do the opposite by encouraging them to spend more time there. I'm the husband of a former teacher. I understand that no one is more frustrated by the current situation in our classrooms than our education professionals. That's why in my first budget, I will ask the General Assembly to create bonuses for teachers who choose to participate in the Cameron Catch-Up Plan as a summertime or after-school instructor. My administration will also partner with state universities to recruit education students to serve as tutors. In return, they will receive a stipend and invaluable hands-on experience. Now, our neighbors to the south have created a similar initiative. In the second year of Tennessee's program, more than 92,000 students chose to participate, and virtually every single district was able to adequately staff its summer learning camps with quality education professionals. In short, our kids will get more reading and math instruction from high-quality educators who will be fairly compensated for their additional service. We will also work with education leaders to return to proven methods of instruction, including phonics-based reading. And we'll add a new reading interventionist expert in every district through the Kentucky Department of Education as a resource for educators to help them implement the Cameron Catch-Up Plan. And I also know from discussions with educators that we need help inside of the classroom on a daily basis. The second pillar of the Cameron Catch-Up Plan involves critical policy changes to improve student performance and the classroom environment. From the teachers I've talked to, restoring order in the classroom is one of the biggest emerging challenges since the Beshear lockdowns. A recent national survey found that 81% of superintendents report classroom behavior is becoming worse. Disruptions prevent students from learning and threaten the safety of educators and young people. And they drive good and honest teachers out of the profession. We cannot and we will not accept chaos in our classrooms. Thankfully, this year, the General Assembly, led by Representative Timmy Truitt, who is also a principal at McKee Elementary in Jackson County, passed a bipartisan bill empowering teachers to address disruptive behavior. It's a good start to a serious problem, and my administration will continue to give teachers and administrators the tools to maintain discipline and make sure that their classrooms are a place of learning and discovery. Now, to further improve classroom safety, my administration will enforce current state law that requires a school resource officer be present in every school. I know some districts are working in good faith in this area, but need more support to get it done. We will give them the help that they need. However, I will say it is somewhat disheartening that our largest district has worked to undermine common sense school safety measures. At the same time, we are witnessing a troubling rise of gun confiscation in schools. Just like our law enforcement officers who walk the beat or man a patrol car, the resource officers who serve our schools deserve our full support and respect. We will not tolerate districts that choose to play politics with the safety of our schools and our children. Finally, the third pillar of the Cameron Catch-Up Plan reduces bureaucracy and gets additional resources into the classroom. Kentucky has been ranked one of the worst in the nation for overall return on our educational investment. Now, this is certainly not the fault of our teachers. This is the fault of government and bureaucracy under which they labor. We must reduce administrative bloat and bring relief to teachers who report an ever-increasing bureaucratic burden. They spend so much time on paperwork and the professional growth program plan that they should be spending that time on teaching. And that's going to change on my watch. Now, what some have said or done, despite that, let me assure you that the Republican Party in this state, under my leadership, will fully support our hardworking teachers in word and in deed. Teachers are not the enemy. They are the key to restoring our kids' futures, and they deserve our respect. Working with the General Assembly, my administration will set the first ever statewide base starting pay rate for new teachers at $41,500. Now, I want to note here as well that if there is any school district that is paying our starting teachers more than that, that is terrific. But what our plan entails is making sure that we get every county in our Commonwealth up to that number so that we can ensure that our teachers are in a position to take care of themselves and be confident in the classroom as they work with our students. We'll also introduce a stipend for student teachers and create discretionary funds for superintendents to pay long-time and proven educators. Kentucky will be more than competitive with surrounding states when it comes to fairly compensating and attracting new classroom teachers. And we will incentivize teachers who have left the classroom to come back. In every one of our 120 counties, we should ensure that teaching is a desirable career path and help dedicated professionals pursue this vocation. I am certainly not afraid to spend money on teachers and students. Money spent in the classroom is far better than money spent on bureaucracy. In fact, it provides a lift to our whole economy. Finally, I'm going to dedicate resources and direct the Kentucky Department of Education to find and return our lost students to the classroom. We simply cannot allow a lost generation of students to drift away, doomed to a life of government dependence or even a dangerous fate like drug addiction. So this is the Cameron Catch-Up Plan, an historic expansion of reading and math instruction, a restoration of order in the classroom, a concerted effort to reduce Kentucky's epidemic of truancy, and a surge of resources directly to the teachers who deserve our respect and our admiration. Now, Kentucky has historically been a leader on education innovation, and we can be once again if we have a governor who is willing to be honest about the challenges we face and then is prepared to go big to fix them. I'm asking the people of this Commonwealth for the chance to be that governor that goes big. And that's the key difference in this campaign. Governor Beshear has no plan to address this generational learning loss crisis. And even if he did, he has no serious relationships with the General Assembly. He can't do anything about these problems, but I can and I will. In many ways, he has worn out his veto pen, and because of it, I think he's worn out his welcome. The very budget reserves that will allow us to fund this plan were vetoed by Andy Beshear. Now, my plan was developed in consultation with legislators and school leaders, something that this governor has never done. My administration will bring an unprecedented level of collaboration in Frankfort centered on supporting our students and educators. Working together, we are going to deliver solutions, not empty rhetoric. We'll help Kentucky students make sure that we catch up, not leave them to fall further behind. And we'll make Kentucky the best place to live, the best place to learn, and the best place to raise a family. Because that is what our kids, our grandkids, and our future generations deserve. Thank you, and God bless you. Happy to take any questions that you all might have. Yes, ma'am.
So as recently as last year, you were a big proponent, supporter of school choice measures. I'm curious if that fits in this plan at all, if you still support those.
Well, as I've shared on numerous occasions, I believe that today, in this moment, what is needed is a plan that focuses on how we get our kids caught up. And the lion's share, the majority of our students are in our public school system. And so we need to focus resources on making sure that our hardworking teachers know that they are respected and appreciated, to make sure that our families understand that there's going to be a governor that's going to fight daily to make sure that we catch our kids up, and that our students know that there is a governor in charge that's going to be looking out for them. Obviously, am grateful for the opportunity to be the Republican nominee, and I believe firmly in the responsibility that we have to our public education system and provide expanding opportunity and choice for our kids as well.
Attorney General, if you were to become governor,
Yes, ma'am.
would you support breaking JCPS into smaller districts?
Well, I understand that that is something that has been floated by members of the legislature, but I just want to go back for a second and say how challenging and how sorry I am for so many parents that last Monday didn't know where their kids were, didn't know where on the bus ride. A lot of kids, as they are earlier in life, they don't carry cell phones. And so just think about the worry and concern that a lot of parents had when their kids, in which some of them didn't show up until 10 o'clock at night. So my heart goes out for the parents. My heart goes out to the bus drivers that were put in a situation that they never imagined. And I just remind people that, one of the challenges that I think we've seen out of Democrat leadership, out of the Democratic Party's leadership, whether it's Andy Beshear or some of the members of our school board, is that they focused and placed way too much emphasis on how to defy Senate Bill 150 as opposed to getting ready and prepared for the new bus schedule, the new bus routes. And so I want to be a governor that is engaged. I want to work with our largest school system to make sure that we are in a position where this never happens again. That is my commitment to the people here in Jefferson County. That is my commitment to the men, women, and children of all 120 counties. You're going to have a governor that not just pushes out the talking points of the past. We've got to have leadership in this state that is ready and willing to meet the moment. That's the type of governor I'm going to be.
So you're saying you would, or something you would look into for smaller districts?
Well, again, I certainly think that, it's important to have conversations about how we can best help the Jefferson County public school system. And I know there are a lot of well-meaning, well-intentioned individuals that want to be engaged in this. For instance, UPS. I mean, they are a big contributor to the economic vitality of this state. They want to be engaged in figuring out how we can help so that we can get our kids back in school. It's unacceptable that some kids, at the very earliest, will not be back in school until next Monday. That's unacceptable, especially if you think about it in the grander context of a governor who shut down our schools for nearly 2 years. We cannot afford to delay the opportunity for our kids to be in school, to be engaged in classroom instruction, because Andy Beshear has put them in such a bad position. That, again, is why, and that was the genesis for the Cameron Catch-Up Plan.
You spoke about the 2019 School Resilience and Safety Act that required schools to have SROs and also mental health professionals, but that was sort of an unfunded mandate. So how will you help those schools that don't have the resources get that done?
Yeah, I firmly believe that when it comes to state government, looking at the Kentucky Department of Education, we have a responsibility to help make sure that we have resource officers in all our schools. And again, as I noted earlier, I mean, there are so many school districts in so many counties across Kentucky that are working as hard as they possibly can in a good faith way to comply with that state law. But again, our state and our General Assembly, we've got to have some skin in the game. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that there are resources on the ground to make sure that we have school resource officers in all our schools.
Do you think, I'm sorry, go ahead. Follow up on that. How much do you anticipate this entire plan costing, and do you anticipate any obstacles from the legislature?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important on that front is that rather than, as we've seen from Andy Beshear, he's very good at drafting on the coattails of the work that our General Assembly has done over the last 3 and plus years on passing tax cuts. He's very good at taking credit for those things, but he has no relationship with our legislature. And so, he might very well, again, in an election season, say things to make folks feel good. But at the end of the day, and I want to make sure our teachers know this, Andy Beshear has no viable way to get anything done on your behalf. It's because he has spent the last 3.5 years stonewalling and throwing the members of our legislature under the bus. Literally, he has no relationship with any of the members of the Republican caucus. And that, again, is not a healthy place, especially, as I talked about earlier, for any society to flourish, to thrive. There are 3 pillars that are necessary. You got to have low crime, you got to have good quality education, and you got to have protection of the family unit. And on every one of those pillars that are foundational to society, Andy Beshear has done more to erode that because he simply does not have the relationships with our legislature. And so it's a long way of coming back to the original point and to your question, which is that in advance of announcing this policy and proposal today, I did what a leader should do. I reached out to members of our legislature to get their buy-in, to get their interest, to get their attention, because as I talked about earlier, this is about making sure that folks, whether you're a family, whether you're a student, whether you are a teacher, to recognize that the Republican Party is under new leadership. And we intend, not only for this decade, but for decades to come, to be the education partner. And so on your specific point of, how much do we anticipate this costing? I roughly at this juncture see at about $100 million. That's what we have pinpointed or targeted as what will be necessary. If it takes more, as I talked about in my remarks earlier, we'll do it because it's important to fund our teachers and to fund our students, because we know, as any teacher knows, as any parent knows, they're our future. So we've got to do everything we can to catch them up and give them a fighting chance to thrive and flourish here in the Commonwealth.
You mentioned earlier raising the base start pay for teachers across the state.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe in the past you've mentioned the possibility of boosting all salaries. Is that still on the table? Are you considering that?
That's very much what we're intending as we talk about increasing the starting salaries for new teachers. You know, there will be a ripple effect, right, because of how the tiers are structured now within our education system. And so we firmly believe that by increasing and raising starting pay, that will ultimately mean that other teachers will get, that have been longer in service, will get raises as well.
Do you think that JCPS is too big of a district to accomplish all the things it's trying to accomplish?
Well, I certainly think that we need to have a conversation about how best we can help Jefferson County, and in particular, the public school system. And so, you know, part of this plan is not only to address the challenges that we see here in this school system, but for every school system across Kentucky. And again, I want to, in a good faith basis, work with JCPS to make sure that we have a robust education system. I talked about the truancy numbers. I mean, a lot of that is happening right here in Jefferson County. Again, I think that's born out of the fact that we had a governor that was indifferent to getting our kids to school over nearly 2 years. And so whether it's absenteeism or truism, or making sure that we have a world-class education system here in Jefferson County, I'm going to do everything I can to be a part of that.
Do you think it's too big? Like, and more specifically, yes or no, would you support the district being broken up?
Well, again, I think at this juncture, what I think is important is that our General Assembly, that members of JCPS, that parents have a conversation about this. I don't think it's important. I think, you know, a governor, and that's one of the things that I think we've seen a lack of from Andy Beshear, is I've told you that I've already collaborated and consulted with our legislature. I've talked to administrators and school leaders. The big key and the big takeaway is collaboration. And so on a big subject, a big topic like this, it would be a disservice for me at this juncture to make some direct statement on whether JCPS is too big, because I want to get with folks in the room. Again, our school board members, our teachers, our parents, and have a discussion about what it looks like to go forward and have consensus. That's what a governor has to be about. Governor has the great ability and the authority, and I've done this as Attorney General, to be a convening authority and to get people in a room, whether it's the opioid epidemic or whether it is the crisis that we are facing here in Jefferson County. Look, again, I told you earlier, I've got skin in the game. My wife is a school teacher. My sister-in-law is a school teacher. My mom was a public educator. I want to make sure that our public education system is the best version of itself. And again, in a school system that services so many of our kids, I want to look at ways in which we can better and improve it.
Would funding charter schools be a priority in your administration if elected governor?
Well, I think, again, what this plan is about catching up our kids that have suffered through the shutdowns that were caused by Andy Beshear. And as you look at some of these numbers that we have identified here, and you look at some of the things that we want to do, this is an aggressive proposal and a set of ideas that has been put forth to address the challenges that we see within our public education system. Again, I stand in support of expanding opportunities and choices around Kentucky, but again, this is about our education system here in the Commonwealth as it relates to public education. So many kids are in the system right now, and so many kids have been failed by Andy Beshear. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, one of the great ironies of the governor and his press conferences, and you all, if you're parents, you know this, that at some point kids were allowed to go back into our schools. But our teachers were forced to wear masks. And if you know about the relationship between a teacher and a student, It's really important for a student, particularly a young child, developmentally, to be able to follow the lips and pair that with the words coming out of a teacher's mouth. Otherwise, you see some of the developmental delays. This is just, part of just a child's development. But one of the things that we saw is that Andy Bashir would walk up to the podium with his mask on, take his mask off to communicate to the state. But at the same time, in a moment where our teachers need to be able to communicate in a way that our students can understand, he didn't grant our teachers that ability because he didn't think it was as important. And that's a shame. And again, at the end of the day, this is about making sure that our teachers, our parents, our students know that the Republican Party is going to be working hard for the remainder of this decade and for decades to come to make sure that this is an education state, not only in word, but also, as I talked about earlier, in deed. And that's what this plan's about. And we're going to keep working and talking about it over the course of the next several months. But that's not where this stops because, again, because of the conversations I've had with the legislature, I feel very confident that we're going to see progress here in Kentucky on the education front that's going to catch our kids up.
You talked about restoring classroom discipline. You focused on SROs and giving teachers the resources that they need. And you talked about policies in classrooms. Is there anything specific or anything that you and your team has seen that you would like to address classroom discipline? And will it also be met with the mental health that children need whenever things like this are happening in schools?
Yeah, on the point of mental health, I mean, again, I'm speaking in many ways to the choir. Because Andy Bashir shut down our state for nearly 2 years, we've seen an increase in mental health challenges. We've seen an increase in the number of children that feel like they're disconnected from communities and society because they were told to be siloed for roughly 2 years. And so as it relates to the classroom and how we can establish best practices and models to help our kids, one of the things that I've heard countless times from teachers is that they don't have an option. They don't have a way to move a student that perhaps is being disruptive out of that environment and placing them in another environment that also allows that child to still learn, but sets that child on in a different environment from the other students so that those students can continue to learn without that disruption. And that happens time and time again. And again, teachers and principals talk about this. And so that is why we put it in the plan. That is why we're going to address it. And that is why it's important to have these interventionists in our school district so that they can identify where there are spots in which there's disruptive behavior. They can report that back to the Kentucky Department of Education, and then we can make decisions along with the department about how to go forward and establish best practices to make sure that our classrooms are as fluid and as good as being a learning environment as they possibly can be. Thank you all so much.
Sir, this is a little bit off topic, but what are your thoughts about the situation within our juvenile detention systems? You've spoken a lot about resources for kids. There was a complete lack of education for the children that are being held in these facilities. That has been confirmed and reported by many. What are your thoughts about what's going on there, and how would you change that?
Again, as a governor who wants to look out for our kids, it's a deplorable situation. And, as governor, again, I talked about collaborating and working with our legislature to address so many challenges. And again, this is about my point earlier about structural, foundational issues that Andy Bashir has been indifferent to. And when you do not address those foundational issues, this one being connected to protecting the family unit, it's not okay. It's not acceptable to have kids sleeping on floors, to not receiving adequate education. But again, Andy Bashir is on an island, has no relationships with our legislature, and can get nothing done to protect our families and protect our kids that are in vulnerable situations. I will be a governor that works with our legislature to address that along with these other issues that I've talked about. Thank you all so much.